Obsession is the second feature film from 26-year-old filmmaker Cory Barker. Known for his online sketch comedy in That's a Bad Idea, this is an interesting shift towards horror, albeit still maintaining a darkly comedic tone. The movie isn't a collection of jump scares or visceral shocks. It understands that suspense isn't the same as noise. It's the promise of something unpredictable, but inevitable. From a technical standpoint, the film uses minimal effects with maximum craft. Tight, claustrophobic framing using a not-so-common aspect ratio, deliberate pacing, and a muted color palette make every room feel like a pressure cooker. The lighting choices are subtle but effective. Half-lit faces, long dark shadows, and an interior world that is the focus of the story. Because of the budget, these could be seen as economical tools, but when used with intention, they create a cinematic language that feels expensive, even if the money wasn't there. The film was shot with a crew the size of what many indie directors call too small, yet the restraint becomes an artistic advantage. Limited locations produce intensity. A handful of props take on symbolic weight. When you have less, every choice matters. The film uses that limitation to sharpen everything, and it shows. The result reads as focused, not cheap. But all this wouldn't work without the performances. The film lives or dies on its actors, and it surely lives. The lead performance from Indy Navarrete as Nikki in particular is terrific. Small physical tics, shifting vocal textures, a face that's a map of private calculation often seen in the dark with a glint in her eyes giving a sense of unease. All the supporting roles are similarly strong, and nobody overplays their part, which is great to see. The ensemble creates a believable ecosystem of relationships, which is vital because relationship dynamics are clearly the movie's beating heart. And that heart is where the film's message lies. Obsession is not a thriller about a monster in the shadows. It's a study of how entitlement and unchecked desire operate inside relationships. It demonstrates the slow erosion of consent, how abuse can be normalized, how small invasions escalate, and how apologies or gaslighting become tools to regain control. The film forcefully refuses to treat abuse as a single dramatic event. Instead, it shows the combined harm of everyday manipulations. The movie doesn't scream its themes. It lets them sink in. Viewers might recognize themselves or someone they know on screen, which is an uncomfortable recognition because it's so plausible. The movie asks us to sit with that discomfort, to look at how we define consent, and to ask whether our cultural narratives excuse or conceal coercion. Scenes that depict manipulation are staged to let viewers recognize patterns for themselves rather than simply stating the film's message. Consent isn't only about a single yes or no. It's about ongoing agency and mutual respect. That's an important and interesting thesis for a mainstream horror movie released in thousands of theaters. It also helps that the film is oftentimes darkly funny, with many scenes making the audience chuckle uncomfortably, making them more relatable. The film is not flawless, however. There are some narrative choices that could be questioned, and I personally had issues with the logistics of how some scenes and events concluded. But clearly it's doing something right, because the modern day TikTok brain, content-driven, short attention span audiences are responding. Word of mouth has been the engine. It's very rare to see a film make more money during its second weekend compared to its first in today's market, especially for horror films, where they generally lose more than 50% of their audiences after their opening weekend. For a low-budget movie to generate this kind of momentum, the story and performances have to do the heavy lifting. And they sure do here. The film proves that a thoughtful, well-crafted narrative can outpace spectacle. There's also something else to appreciate: the film's accessibility, because it's grounded in real emotional stakes rather than elaborate effects. It's relatable. The scares are human ones. fear of betrayal, fear of being overshadowed, and maybe most importantly, fear of losing autonomy. That universality helps Obsession reach a wide audience, and most importantly, makes them remember it, rather than simply moving on to the next big thing. The filmmakers clearly chose restraint over spectacle. They trusted the audience to feel rather than be told. The film's pacing allows moments to breathe. It makes silence heavy, and it doesn't seem worried about audiences getting bored of long, dialogue-heavy takes with little to no jump scares. Yes, the violence is there, but it doesn't overwhelm, making their appearances more impactful. This is that rare mainstream movie experience where you might see and hear conversations outside the movie theater. Discussions about accountability, how we teach consent, how we recognize emotional abuse. Discussions about accountability, how we teach consent, how we recognize emotional abuse are as much part of Obsession's impact as its box office receipts. The movie also feels strangely timeless, with its 70s aesthetics but with current day dialogue that could lead to its longevity in the upcoming years. Obsession is scary because it's believable. It works because it's specific about power and consent, and it's well made because every small filmmaking choice serves the story. It's also a reminder that bold filmmaking doesn't require a massive budget. It requires clarity of vision, strong performances, focus, and the courage to tackle difficult subjects honestly. Maybe there is hope after all for bold, singular visions in today's mainstream cinema. Horror films in particular have been enjoying a strong run these past few years. Let's hope the trend continues.